Hey everyone, welcome back. Ready to take a peek into the future.
Always. Though I should say, we're not exactly fortune tellers here.
Right. We're not predicting the future, but we are going on a deep dive today, exploring some big questions about where humanity might be headed.
Sounds exciting.
It is. And we're basing this deep dive on the final episode of that series, Timelines, The Story of Us, which is really thought-provoking.
I loved that series.
It really gave you a new perspective on history.
Absolutely. And this last episode got me thinking a lot about the potential crossroads humanity is facing right now.
Yeah, and that's what we're going to unpack today. What are those big themes? What choices might define the future? Think of this deep dive as your cheat sheet.
A cheat sheet for the future. I like it.
So one of the things that really struck me in the episode is the idea that to understand where we're going, we first need to understand where we've been.
Oh, I love that point. It's like we each stand at crossroads in our own lives, right?
That time.
And those moments where we're trying to decide which way to go, well, looking back at our own past experiences can really help inform those decisions. It's the same for humanity as a whole. Understanding our history can guide us as we face the future.
Totally. And the Timelines episode doesn't shy away from the fact that progress isn't always a smooth ride.
Yeah, it's not all sunshine and roses.
They actually use a really interesting phrase, the dual nature of progress. It gets at how every advancement seems to come with both positive and negative consequences. Like they use the Industrial Revolution as a prime example.
Oh yeah, a perfect example.
It led to amazing innovations, but also things like pollution and huge social upheavals.
And we're seeing that pattern play out today too. Think about artificial intelligence or genetic engineering. These are technologies with incredible potential for good,
No doubt.
but also the risk of unintended consequences. We have to be so careful.
It's almost like we're playing with fire sometimes.
In a way, yeah. Take CRISPR, for example, that gene editing technology.
I'd heard of it.
It could revolutionize healthcare. We could cure diseases that were once thought to be incurable. But it also opens the door to things like designer babies, where parents could essentially choose their children's traits.
Wow.
Yeah. It really begs the question, just because we can do something, does it mean we should?
Right, that's such a huge ethical question. And it's one that the Timelines episode keeps coming back to. In fact, they highlight 3 major challenges that humanity's wrestling with right now, all connected to this idea of progress and its potential downsides.
Let me guess. Climate change.
You got it.
I figured. It's the big one, isn't it?
Definitely top of mind for a lot of people. The other 2 they highlight are the ethics of these emerging technologies we were just talking about, and then global inequality.
It's like the triple whammy of the 21st century. And they're all interconnected, too.
Totally intertwined. And the episode doesn't sugarcoat it. They lay out how urgent these issues are, especially climate change.
What I appreciated is that they don't just say, hey, climate change is bad. They actually take the time to explain the science behind it.
The evidence.
Yeah, the evidence that it's real and that humans are the main cause. But they do it in a way that anyone can understand. You don't have to be a scientist to get it.
Which is so important.
Right.
Yeah.
Because we all need to be part of the solution. And while the episode does mention solutions like renewable energy, it also emphasizes that there's no quick fix here. This is going to take global action, collective effort, and, honestly, some big changes in how we live.
No easy answers. So let's dive a little deeper into those ethical dilemmas surrounding AI and genetic engineering. We've already touched on CRISPR and designer babies, but it goes so much further than that.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, what happens when algorithms start making life or death decisions for us? How do we ensure AI is being used ethically and doesn't just amplify the biases that already exist?
These are questions we have to be asking now. It's like we're holding this incredibly powerful tool, and we have to figure out how to use it responsibly.
Right, because it could go either way. It's that dual nature of progress again.
Exactly. And that's what makes it so fascinating and, honestly, a little bit terrifying.
A little bit of both, for sure. And speaking of things that can be both fascinating and terrifying, let's move on to that third big challenge the episode highlights. Global inequality.
Oh, yeah, that one's a tough one.
It's like we're living in this age of incredible abundance and technological advancement, but so much of the world is being left behind.
And it's heartbreaking because, in many ways, the technology that's driving progress could also be used to bridge those gaps.
Hmm.
But if we're not careful,
It can make things even worse.
exactly, it could exacerbate existing inequalities, creating even deeper divides between the haves and the have-nots.
And that's what's so thought-provoking about the episode. They connect this issue of inequality back to that dual nature of progress idea. Progress often benefits some groups more than others.
We see it throughout history, and we're seeing it right now with things like the digital divide and the wealth gap.
It's a stark reminder that we have to be intentional about making sure progress benefits everyone, not just a select few.
It's about creating a future where everyone has the opportunity to thrive, not just survive. And that's a future worth fighting for. Wow, so much to think about.
Right. My head's spinning a little bit.
All those challenges, those big questions, it can feel a bit overwhelming, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a lot. But in a weird way, I'm also feeling kind of optimistic.
Really? Why is that?
I think it's because the Timelines episode, despite all the heavy stuff, it really highlights humanity's resilience.
You're right.
Like, think about all the obstacles we've overcome throughout history. Wars, famines, plagues. We've been through a lot.
And we're still here.
Exactly. We find a way.
And that gives me hope for the future.
Me too. It's like, okay, we've got some big challenges ahead, but we've faced big challenges before, and we've come out stronger on the other side.
It's that human spirit, that drive to survive, to innovate, to find solutions. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we're kind of hardwired for problem solving.
It's in our DNA.
Totally. So before the break, we were talking about that potential cultural renaissance fueled by the digital age. I want to circle back to that. What aspects of that idea particularly stood out to you?
You know, what fascinates me is how technology is democratizing creativity. It used to be that creating and sharing art required access to, well, expensive equipment
Oh, yeah, totally.
and gatekeepers and a whole lot of luck. But now, anyone with a smartphone can potentially reach a global audience.
That's so true.
We're seeing this explosion of new voices, new forms of expression, new ways of telling stories. It's really exciting.
It's amazing, isn't it? It's like the internet has become this giant canvas, and anyone can contribute their
I
brushstroke.
love that analogy.
And it's not just about art either. It's about knowledge and ideas, too. We have access to so much information now.
It can be overwhelming for sure.
It definitely can. But it also empowers us to learn and grow in ways that were never before possible.
It's like we're all carrying around the Library of Alexandria in our pockets, but even more vast and diverse.
That's a great way to put it. But it's not just about passively consuming all this information. It's about using it to question assumptions, to challenge the status quo, to connect with others who share our interests. It's about being an active participant in the global conversation.
I think that's a really important point. It's about being an engaged citizen, not just a passive consumer. So we've talked about some of the bright spots, but let's not forget the shadows. The episode is pretty honest about the issue of global inequality,
Yeah, they don't shy away from it.
which I appreciate. It's a reminder that progress doesn't always reach everyone equally.
And that some of the very things driving progress, like technology, could actually end up making those inequalities even worse.
Right. If we're not careful,
It's a real balancing act.
it is.
Yeah.
We need to be intentional about ensuring that everyone benefits from progress, not just a select few.
I think that's a crucial point. It's not enough to just celebrate technological advancements. We have to constantly be asking ourselves, who's benefiting from this? Who's being left behind? And how can we create a more equitable future?
Exactly. And we all have a role to play in that. It's not just up to governments or big corporations.
We can all make choices that contribute to a more just and equitable world. Something that really got me thinking was the episode's emphasis on legacy, the idea that we're all leaving a mark on the world, whether we realize it or not.
It's a humbling thought.
It is, and it made me really reflect on the kind of impact I want to have. What kind of story do I want to leave behind?
I love that way of thinking about it. It's not necessarily about grand achievements or becoming famous. It's about the small, everyday choices we make.
Right. How we treat others, how we contribute to our communities, how we use our talents and resources to make a positive difference.
It's about being a good human.
Yeah, and it's about realizing that those seemingly small choices actually can have a ripple effect.
They absolutely do.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, the challenges, the opportunities, the kind of future we want to create. But now I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on the practical side of all this. What are some concrete steps we can take as individuals to actually start making a difference?
That's the question, isn't it? It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of these global challenges. Like, what can one person really do?
Right. It can feel like a drop in the ocean.
But remember, the ocean is made up of millions and millions of drops. And the Timelines episode actually does a great job of showing how history is full of seemingly small actions that snowballed into huge changes.
That butterfly effect.
Exactly. So what can you, listening right now, actually do? Well, one thing this Timelines episode does really well is show how history is full of these seemingly small actions that snowballed into huge change.
Oh, yeah, those ripple effects. They give some great examples in the episode.
Right, so I think that's really encouraging.
It is. But I'm curious, what specific actions do you think would be most impactful for our listeners, especially thinking about all the things we've been discussing about this crossroads humanities along?
Okay, well, let's start with climate change, since that seems to be top of mind for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's a big one.
It is. And honestly, it can feel pretty daunting,
For sure.
but there are things you can do, like today.
What kind of things?
Well, just think about it. Every time you choose to walk instead of drive, that's a choice that aligns with a more sustainable future.
Okay. Yeah, makes sense.
Or buying from a local farmer's market instead of a megastore.
Supporting local. I like it.
Right. Or even just something as simple as turning off lights when you leave a room.
Those little things can add up.
They really do. And plus, when you start making those small changes, it often leads to, like, bigger shifts in your mindset.
How so?
Well, maybe you start composting, to reduce your waste.
Okay.
And then you realize, hey, I want to cut down on my food waste overall.
Right. Seeing the bigger picture.
Exactly. And suddenly you're making different choices at the grocery store, cooking differently, the whole thing.
Like a domino effect.
Exactly. So yeah, everyday sustainability is huge. But what about those listeners who are really fired up about the ethics of all this emerging tech, like AI and gene editing?
Oh, yeah, those are hot topics right now.
They are. And it can feel like it's all moving so fast, faster than we can even process.
It does feel that way sometimes.
It absolutely does. But that just means it's more important than ever to be informed and engaged.
What can people do to stay informed?
Read articles, listen to podcasts like this one, of course.
Of course.
Ones that explore these issues from different perspectives. Talk to your friends and family about it.
Have those conversations.
Yes. The more we talk about these things, the more we can shape the direction they take.
We can be part of the conversation.
Exactly. And, don't underestimate the power of asking questions. When you
Right.
see a new tech product or service, don't just blindly accept it. Ask yourself, how is this data collected? What are the privacy implications? Is this reinforcing existing biases?
Be a conscious consumer.
Yes, exactly.
And that goes for all kinds of consumption, not just technology.
Oh, absolutely. Especially when we think about global inequality.
Right, that was one of the big challenges highlighted in the episode.
A huge one. And one that we all have a responsibility to address.
So what can we do to make sure progress benefits everyone, not just a select few?
Well, one thing is to support organizations that are working to combat poverty and promote education around the world.
Okay, that makes sense.
But it's not just about donating money.
What else can we do?
You can volunteer your time, advocate for policy changes, even just educate yourself about the root causes of these issues. The more we understand, the more effectively we can act. And honestly, a lot of it comes down to being mindful of our own consumption habits.
Like what we buy, where we buy it from.
Exactly. Do we really need that new gadget? Or could we use that money to support a local business or donate to a cause we believe in? It's about aligning our spending with our values.
Making those conscious choices.
Yes. And remember, it's not about being perfect. It's about making progress.
Progress over perfection.
Exactly. Every step we take towards a more sustainable, equitable, and ethical future is a step in the right direction.
Love it. Okay, so we've talked about climate change, technology, inequality. But what about the bigger picture idea of legacy? What can we do today to start shaping the story we'll leave behind?
Well, that's a great question.
It's something I've been thinking about a lot.
Me too. And honestly, I think it comes down to some really simple things.
Like what?
Be kind, be compassionate, be curious, cultivate your talents, connect with others. These might sound basic, but they're the foundation of a meaningful life, a life that leaves a positive impact.
It's about who we are, not just what we do.
Exactly. And remember, it's not about waiting for some big opportunity to make a difference.
The opportunity is now.
Yes, it's right here, right now, in every interaction, every choice.
Well said. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. The future isn't something that just happens to us.
We're all creating it together.
Every single day. So what kind of future do you want to create?
That's the question we all have to ask ourselves,
And then go out there and start building it.
one step at a time.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive. Thanks for joining us. And remember, the power to shape the future lies within each and every one of you.